A year ago, the San Antonio Spurs were the #1 seed in the Western Conference playoff race. They lost in the first round of the Memphis Grizzlies. This year, San Antonio, the first seed again, taking on the Utah Jazz and Big Al Jefferson. Tony Parker, the key figure for San Antonio this year, and running the point beautifully on this play over to Boris Diaw, getting the start, hoop and harm on that play. He made the free throw. San Antonio goes up by a pair early. Al Jefferson working in the post and working hard. Gets his own miss and puts it back up and in. San Antonio and Utah playing tight 23-19. Look at Manu Ginobili. Quick and springy to the hoop. Keep in mind, San Antonio did a lot of squad rotation down the stretch of the regular season, so their big men are fresh. Their players are fresh, and Tony Parker looking fresh on that little up and under move. San Antonio up by 5, and look at Tim Duncan. A little bounce there as well. Tim Duncan puts him up by 5 again, but look at Paul Millsap to the rack. Duncan baseline on Duncan. San Antonio up by 4. Later, it's Tim Duncan time in the third quarter. He's starting to amass some amazing historical numbers. This pushed him into the 4,000 career playoff point mark. But as Duncan goes strong to the hoop and dunks over Paul Millsap, notice that Utah is staying close in this game. Now, no look pass from Manu Ginobili, just a gem from Ginobili over to Duncan. He lays that one in. That put the Spurs up by 10, starting to extend that lead. Steven Jackson, keep in mind they picked him up in the middle of the season, 82-68. After that three-pointer, Jazz coming back behind the Jamal Tinsley three. That cuts the lead down to 8, and it's Tony Parker getting the feed right off the shoulder from Manu Ginobili for the tough layup. Let's watch it one more time. And Parker just hanging in the air to make that shot. Spurs up by 10 later. Spurs moving the ball, and another three-point shooter, Matt Bonner, buries the triple down the stretch. Utah, well, they just couldn't hang with San Antonio. San Antonio pulls away, winning Game 1 comfortably over the Utah Jazz to take a 1-0 lead in the series.
Game 2 of the 1 versus 8 matchup in the Western Conference. And prior to the tip, Greg Popovich receiving his second Red Auerbach Trophy as the NBA Coach of the Year. David Robinson and Tim Duncan on hand as Al Jefferson and company try and even up the series, but it's an uphill battle. Spurs playing so well, and they came out of the gate scorching hot. Here the Jazz turn it over, and Tony Parker makes them pay. Going coast to coast. It was 15-4 to begin, and they were far from done. Danny Green playing more defense. He feeds Tony Parker, and then Parker gets it back to Danny Green. Spurs clicking on all cylinders. Parker to Boris Diaw, the big fella, makes it 20-8. Here's Steven Jackson off target. Big Al Jefferson tips it to Gordon Hayward, who finds Josh Howard. Jazz shooting just 30% though in the first quarter. In the second, Manu Ginobili, more defense from the Spurs. Juwan Blair recovers, finds Gary Neal, and he drills the three, 31-17. Derek Favors bounces on a loose ball, and the lane misses. Paul Millsap scraps for the rebound, and he gets the tough lay-in, 31-26. Utah hanging around within 5. Paul Millsap, no. Tim Duncan, the outlet to Tony Parker, and then he finds Kawhi Leonard. Leonard was on fire in the first half. He had 12 points on 4 of 5 shooting over the first 2 quarters. That was part of an 11-0 Spurs run. Third quarter, Tony Parker, the scoop to the hoop for the deuce. 68-35. Parker getting creative. Now it's Tim Duncan's turn. Duncan getting the friendly roll at home. It was 72-40. The Spurs running away with it. And in the fourth quarter, for good measure, Juwan Blair from Steven Jackson. Spurs, no doubt about it, they take Game 2 and have a commanding lead heading into Game 3, which will be Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern in Utah.
Western Conference opening round, Game 3 of the West top seed Spurs. They're up 2-0 on Utah. There's Jazz legend John Stockton in the house trying to urge his team on against Tony Parker and the Spurs. Again, the #1 seed versus the 8 seed in this one. San Antonio, can they get this done on the road? Parker, the jumper, and the early 5-point lead for the Spurs. More San Antonio. Parker, this time to Tim Duncan. How many times is that combination connected? Gets the and one. Spurs on top 16-13. Utah, Al Jefferson out to Devin Harris for the three. And the Jazz take the lead 23-22. Manu Ginobili finds Gary Neal for three. Spurs back on top. Seesaw game, very tight early on. Second quarter, good defense for Utah. DeMarre Carroll, the steal. To Al Jefferson on the wing. Nice little soft 15-foot jumper. Thank you very much. Utah on top once again. More from Devin Harris. He had 21 points, 5 assists here. Sees the seam, beats Tony Parker to the spot. Puts it up and in. Jazz have the lead. 3 seconds left, first half. Tim Duncan to Manu Ginobili to Matt Bonner for three. To beat the buzzer and give the Spurs the lead at the half. One more look at it. Bonner. Money. 52-50. Spurs on top at the break. Third quarter we go. Off the Jefferson miss. Here come the Spurs. Parker to Duncan. Touchdown. To TD. Spurs on top by a deuce. Danny Green, the three. 14 points for him in the game. Spurs on top by 3. Thiago Splitter drives, kicks out to Steven Jackson, who's got all night long to measure that one. 8-point lead for the Spurs. They're going on a 23-8 spurt. Ginobili to Splitter in traffic. 10-point lead. Go in the fourth quarter. The Jazz come back on an 8-0 run. Derek Favors inside. Gets that to go. Favors 15 points, 11 boards off the bench for Utah. Off a Jazz miss. Parker for Jackson. 13 points for Steven Jackson. Then Splitter, the rejection. In transition, Ginobili to Green. Spurs taking command in this one, and they begin to smell it. Under 6 minutes to go in the game. Off the Danny Green miss, though. Gordon Hayward gets the rebound all the way up. He sees Paul Millsap there in the baseline, spotting up. Easy 15-footer. Jazz trying to stay in the game, down by 9, but too much San Antonio, too much Tony Parker. He was everywhere. 25 points, 6 assists in the game. One more look at this. 102-90. The Spurs coming on strong in the second half to get the win. They lead this series 3-0. Very much in control as they look to move on to the next round.
In the first 3 games of their opening round Western Conference Series, the number 1 seed San Antonio Spurs have outscored the Utah Jazz by a combined 58 points. Game 4 in Utah. Derek Favors getting the start. We start in the first quarter. Tim Duncan working in the paint on Al Jefferson. Hoop and harm there. San Antonio already up by 5. Derek Favors, what does he bring? How about some defense on Thiago Splitter? Huge rejection here. Throws that one right back down to the floor. Utah would need more of that. Second quarter, Steven Jackson open, and nobody's there. He takes the 3 and buries that one. San Antonio up by 13, 41-28. Devin Harris driving, paint, hoop, harm. And San Antonio's lead, well, it's down to 9 after that, but they're still in control. Tim Duncan with the quick pass to DeJuan Blair down low, who goes up quick with the shot. San Antonio up by 8 at the half, 50-42. Third quarter, more from the Spurs. It's Tony Parker. A little hesitation move there. Hoop and harm, 59-46. San Antonio pulling away. Tim Duncan combining on a rejection on Gordon Hayward on that play. That's Duncan's 460th career playoff block, which ties Shaq for third most all time. Later in the third quarter, Devin Harris, acrobatic on that play, part of a 10-0 run for Utah. That cuts the Spurs lead down to 5. Manu Ginobili hadn't hit a 3 the entire series. In the third quarter, he started heating up from 3. Nails that one from distance. Manu, again, open in the corner, short porch 3. That one goes as well. Spurs up 68-58, fourth quarter. More of the same. Fine Ginobili, a little hesitation, pulling on the 3. Part of a 10-0 personal run for Ginobili. And despite a furious late rally by the Jazz, the Spurs sweep Utah out of the playoffs.